Have you ever been confused by fertilizing your garden? Well, if so, you're not alone because fertilizing can be one of the most complicated topics. And it's actually not something I usually teach about because, in many scenarios, over fertilizing a home garden can actually be worse than not fertilizing at all. However, it is crucial that we feed our soil, introduce beneficial microbes, that we bring the soil back to life. And that is why I'm so excited for today's episode because I am interviewing the founder of Earth Medicine, Leia. Her and her dad are owners of this company, and they have an incredible product called Earth Medicine. The episode is not a sales pitch for Earth Medicine, although it really should be, but it's really just a overall teaching and deep dive on beneficial microbes and how to feed our soil and how to really nurture our garden in a way that mimics nature. That doesn't mean that we have to go down to the garden center and buy more product. We just need to replicate what nature naturally does. And Earth Medicine does that exact thing. It's a product that doesn't just feed our vegetable garden, it can feed our fruit trees, our herbs, our flowers, even our houseplants. I've had so many great takeaways, and I know you're going to love this episode. So let's welcome Leia to the show. Hi, Leia. Welcome to the Audrey's Little Farm Show. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and just chat with you and see how everything goes.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited for today because I know fertilizing for the home gardener can be such a complicated topic. It's usually not something I even recommend in many of my teachings just because in many scenarios, too much fertilizer can be worse than none at all. And I just know a lot of gardeners end up over fertilizing because that's what the marketing, media does. And
Mhm.
so I know Earth Medicine, or I know with Earth Medicine, that's actually not the case, which is why it's one of my favorite soil amendments in my garden. And you also just really need a very small amount, which is awesome. So, will you just explain what Earth Medicine is for anyone who's unfamiliar? And then we'll dive into kind of the background of your guys' story and upbringing and all the fun stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, you don't need a lot of earth medicine to actually treat an entire yard. Our product is really unique in a sense of it being a microbial fertilizer. And so, what that is you're actually just adding beneficial microbes into your soil, which then unlocks the nutrients to then naturally fertilize your plants. And the biggest thing with that is the gardener doesn't have a risk of burning up their plants. And so I know with just traditional run of the mill fertilizers, that's a real concern for a lot of gardeners is like how much am I using? Am I using enough? Why are my leaves turning yellow? Like I burnt everything, everything's cooked, and then you end up frying that root structure, right? And the root structure in our plants, that's everything, right? And so when you are dealing with more of a chemical base, a synthetic fertilizer, it's just there's a lot of complications that can come along with it. And so typically people end up over fertilizing and end up doing more damage than good. And so when you're using a microbial fertilizer, all you're doing is adding in natural microbes into your soil. And these microbes are like the hidden workers of the gardening world. And our product, the main thing that we are educating our users on are the beneficial microbes. We do have a fertilizing effect of an NPK, which I know all your listeners will know. But our NPK is very minimal. It's only a 114. And so when you are dealing with that low amount of nutrients, you really don't have the risk of burning your plants. So it makes it very, very safe for seedlings, for established plants, for just getting your garden going. And so that's really kind of the thing that separates us from other products that are on the market is that real user-friendly method of fertilizing your garden naturally.
I love that. Well, it's just so important. Like, everything you just said, I love that it's so beginner friendly, but also it's incredibly useful and helpful. And there's many products I have used occasionally in the past. And I remember like, I'll read through the label and it feels like it's like a science where it's like, this exact amount, you have to dilute it. You have to only apply it, at these stages, this time of year, not when there's blooms, not when there's this or that. and it's super complicated. And I know for especially the beginner gardener, that is really overwhelming. And so I actually have my earth medicine bag right here, which we're going to get into kind of the specifics. I'll let you explain kind of how much this bag can handle. But I guess I just wanted to kind of show, like, as I'm reading on the back earlier before our episode today, the directions are super clear on the back. Nothing is complicated. It's just super simple for the everyday gardener to use. So I love that. So we'll
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about that in a little bit, but I was just reading through to see what your guys' directions were, and super simple for the home gardener, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like that's kind of the thing is like I always say I'm just like a token lazy gardener. I am not interested in doing complicated mixtures. I'm not interested in diluting stuff. I honestly like I want a one-stop shop product that can kind of cover my bases and give me really good results without overcomplicating things with like you said, just the specific times of application, the specific dosages. Like we've really gone far, like kind of off on the deep end as consumers, where we have all these complicated products that we have to use that are kind of promising us the world, and if we don't do it quite right, we just don't get the results that we were hoping for. And honestly, like I know there's just kind of going on a side tangent, like I know there was like such a message being pushed about our soil lacking nutrients. And everybody is saying, the food that we're getting in the grocery store is not as nutritionally dense because the soil lacks nutrients, and there was just such a high push on that. And honestly, like, that's not actually completely accurate. We don't have a nutrient deficient problem in our soil. We have a microbe deficiency in our soil problem. So, like, what we're actually lacking in our soils is living microbes, because there are plenty of nutrients trapped in your soil. They're just trapped. Keyword trapped. Whether that's in your sand particles, whether that's in your clay particles, whether that's in the loomy soil mix particles, like all those nutrients are laying dormant in your soil. You just don't have any biology left in your soil to actually access that. So that's kind of the thing that why people, when they are introducing a microbial fertilizer, whether it's ours or somebody else's, why they end up getting those really great results is because you're introducing that living biology that our soils just don't have anymore, because of, we're tilling, we're just like kind of taking so much from the soil, and we're not putting anything back. And like that's actually what typically is happening in our society, right from like large commercial growing down to homesteading. Where if we're constantly taking from the soil and not putting anything back, we're going to get that deficiency of our vegetables and our produce not having any nutrients, because we don't have the microbes to actually access those nutrients to then help grow those plants. So with that being said, that product that you just showed, that's our 7-pound bag of earth medicine, and a little goes a long way. And so I always like to tell everybody, like, 7 pounds can spot treat a 7-acre yard. I have plenty of women who have been longtime customers of mine, who have, they live on the farm, they have that kind of homestead area where it's about 7 acres. And so they have a sizable garden. They have, whether it's some raised beds or they just have in-ground planting, they have, the flowers that they have out on their porch and on their deck, and then they have their flower beds in front of their house, right? That kind of gives you the typical picture of of a farmyard. And they are more than happy with 7 pounds, because all you're doing is sprinkling about a tablespoon of product onto the surface of the soil. And those microbes are then working themselves into your soil and accessing all that trapped nutrients so that your plant can just naturally feed themselves. So 7 pounds can spot treat a 7-acre yard. If you are looking for more dialed in specifications on actual application, if you're like, I don't do flower beds, I don't do flower pots, I just have, a dozen 4x6 raised garden beds, I have more specific application rates in that on the back on our website or on the back of the bag and stuff. But like you said, you could do about, 1,000 to 4,000 square feet of coverage with that 7-pound bag. And the one nice thing about our product is you can use it in two different ways where honestly, you just do two applications in late spring, early summer, and then everything's taking off and you don't have to do any more application, right? You fed your soil in the beginning of the season. All those microbes are going to work and then to help your plants take up all that nutrients and grow and produce all summer long. Or if you want to say if you're growing like flowers or you're growing something that's constantly trying to put out blooms, whether it's like maybe like a fruit, strawberry bush, raspberry bush, anything like that, where you're wanting to have a couple harvests off of it throughout the season, you can sprinkle like that tablespoon amount of product every 6 to 8 weeks. It just really kind of depends on what you want to do. Um, I personally, in my garden, I only do the spring and early summer application because my garden ends up getting so big that it's, like, kinda hard to actually get down to the soil and fertilize, in that top inch, and so I just find it's much better to do that, but, if I have, like, a hydrangea bush and it's producing, beautiful hydrangeas, I'm just putting a little dose of earth medicine every, 6 to 8 weeks at the below of that perennial bush and getting amazing results, so it really kinda depends on what you're growing, but the main thing is that it can be used on anything, inside or outside that you're growing.
That is so incredible. You mentioned that if you wanna do just instead of, like, the spot application, but you just wanna do it a couple times a year, you mentioned late spring and early summer. Are
Mhm.
you so you're doing them kinda back to back, like, early in spring when you plant your spring garden, and then early summer when things really start taking off?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. So just to clarify, if we have our seedlings that we started inside and then we're planting into the garden, you can put a little bit of earth medicine with those. If you are starting from seed, you just want to plant your seeds, give it a couple weeks to start getting established, and then put the microbes down. The reason why for that is just as you know, with seedlings or seeds, what we're trying to do is develop a really hardy root system. And so, if you baby it right from the beginning, those roots aren't going to be as strong or as resilient as we want because all the nutrients is like catered right to them, right?
Right.
And so, what I find honestly is just if you give it a couple weeks, let that root structure begin to be established and then top dress with I'm a hand talker. I
Me
just
too.
like whip my mic off. Um, but if you top dress afterwards, you're just going to get a more resilient, tougher plant. The other thing though is if you were just wanting to start your season, like, how everybody will like prep their beds before they want to start planting, you can absolutely use the product for that. So if you're working it into that 12-inch soil profile, that's absolutely fine. You can plant your seeds, you can plant your seedlings, like everything is totally fine to do it that way. It's more so of just as your listeners will eventually see the granulars, you just don't want the granulars right next to that little seed because it will have a chance of just having that root structure not be as tough and as strong because as you know, right, we're trying to grow a really robust root system so that it goes deep into that soil and it's like going down into it to access that trapped nutrients and it's just going to make a more resilient plant. So that's kind of my takeaway on that. We do have a lot of information on our website to kind of give you a guide of what you want to do. But basically twice, in the beginning of the season, or you can just prep all your beds with the product before you plant anything, as long as it's in that 12-inch profile.
Great. And so right now in real time for all of you listening, which we're right now, in early September, this
Mhm.
would be a great product then for people to use in their fall gardens to either get that soil ready or once they're plants are taken off to fertilize throughout the fall and winter months. Is
Oh,
that correct?
yeah. Absolutely, especially for I believe it's, like, zone 9. You're in zone 9?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a great time to add the product in that time frame because you guys are all coming off of a summer crop, right? You guys you've harvested and now you're looking to plant your fall crops. Well, all of that summer crop, it took a lot of nutrients and microbial life to produce those summer crops, right? So, since you guys are harvesting all of that away, a really easy way to boost your soil to get it prepped and ready for a really abundant fall crop is by adding these microbes back into the soil. So, people, they do crop rotation, they do cover crops, they do things to amend it. This is just another tool in your toolbox to really boost your soil and prep it for that fall planting so that you can get really abundant produce.
Great. And that's one of the things some of my listeners maybe have heard in the past or maybe not, but I talk a lot about the fact of, well, as a side tangent, just online advice in general is very overcomplicated because I read a lot of articles, hear lots of videos where they tell gardeners like me in zone 9 and, basically year round growing zones that you can't go straight from summer to fall. You have to either rotate to a different area. But for the home gardener who's really limited on space, they
Yep.
probably don't have the space to then go to a different bed or go to a different row or whatever it might be.
Yep.
And me personally in the garden, I've never had any trouble going from summer to fall, but I always amend with something in between. Usually it's organic compost that we either composted ourselves or I used to go buy before I was familiar with earth medicine, I used to go buy loads and loads of compost and, come spread
Mhm.
it out. But
Yep.
just feeding the microbes, it's not so much you're not fertilizing the plants, you're just replenishing that soil. And so I just want to get that point across because that's really the important part is especially what you've been saying. It's why your guys' fertilizers, it's feeding the microbes and it's bringing your soil back, basically back to life. And you don't have to worry about those complicated ratios of what fertilizer to add because you're just feeding the soil, not necessarily the plant.
Yeah, exactly. When you feed the soil can naturally feed your plant.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. I always kind of like relate it back to the human body and say nutrition. If you are working out and you can go two ways of like getting jacked, right? You can go the fast way of steroids, or you can go the longer but more longevity way of a whole food diet. So both are going to give you results. One is going to give you an instant boost, a steroid. You're going to, get all juiced up. And that's what you're doing to your plants, really. Like, let's be honest, when you are fertilizing, you're juicing up your plants. You're going nutrients to plant. Like, there's no in between. Um, and yeah, you're going to get results, but it's not a long term solution. And that's why we end up with depleted soils. That's why over time you will start to see, like, gosh, I cannot for the life of me grow this abundant garden, or my lawn looks like crap, or whatever. It's just not producing like it used to. And it's because you've depleted all the resources in the soil, right? You can still keep on trying to juice it up with fertilizer, but you're not getting the same results as you once were. But then if you were to take the approach of eating like a whole food diet, you're going to have results that are going to last you your entire lifetime. And so, just like with the human body, we can do like a quick fix, or we can go the longer, more organic, holistic approach. And that's kind of the difference between a synthetic fertilizer and a product like Earth Medicine, where Earth Medicine is going to be the whole food diet for your soil and your plant, and then a synthetic fertilizer is going to be just a quicker fix.
Right. That is such a great analogy. I never thought of it that way, but that just makes complete sense. Like the steroids and the fertilizer compared to feeding the
Mhm.
soil long-term health. I love that.
Mhm. Yeah, I know. I It's funny, you can really relate everything out in nature back to us as humans. I always try to make that link because I know majority of your listeners probably are familiar with things like probiotics, right? Like probiotics, our gut health, that has been a hot topic of conversation in the natural health world for a very, very long time. And we all know, like, when we add beneficial microbes, beneficial bacteria, probiotics into our own guts, that's going to make us better, absorb nutrients from our food, digest our food properly. It's the exact same with the soil. If you're putting beneficial microbes into your soil, it's really like putting a probiotic in for your soil, because those microbes, they're the key that unlocks the nutrients. So you have your nutrients, you have your plant, and then you have your microbes. That is that key that's going to unlock so that the two can meet. Um, and they're just a key component that has kind of gotten lost on topics of conversation. And I know we always talk about amending, and what I have found lately is like a lot of people are saying, like, I know I need to take care of my soil, but I don't really know why. Like, I know it's kind of like, I know I should maybe eat, this certain way, but I might not know the exact mechanics of why I should or whatever. And so that's what I try to do, is just communicate really simply um why this is important for your soil and for your garden, so that one way I do that is just by relating it back to the human body, honestly.
Right. Well, and I think one of the reasons why it is a very complicated topic is when we're out in the garden, we can only see what's above the soil and we can see
Mhm.
either healthy plants or unhealthy plants.
Yeah.
And all the magic really is happening beneath the soil, and we can't see that part. So we just have to, even in simple terms, even if we don't quite understand, we just have to feed the feed the soil, the microbes, even if it doesn't really make sense, because then we know beneath the soil, that's where the magic happens.
Oh,
And then in
yeah.
time, you see the results above. Like the
Yes.
last couple of gardens I've had have been incredible, but I've spent years, trying to like the well, as a kind of a backtrack, the area where my main garden is used to be a horse pasture, and
Hmm.
it was just, you know, stomped on, for like 20 plus years, nothing. It was so hard and compacted, like nothing was out there other than the horses running around. And it
Hmm.
took probably about 5 years, of constant work, continuing to plant and add compost and mulched up leaves and all the things before finally everything started taking off. And now it's just incredible. But it was a work
Perfect.
in progress because it was like the soil needed to come back to life, basically.
Absolutely. And that's going to be like anything, unless you're starting from, a blank slate with raised beds and you're making your own mixture in there. Like, yeah, it's no matter whether you're using earth medicine or not, like, it's going to take work to take a hard, compacted area and turn it into a really abundant garden. But that's, with like anything that's worth it, takes time and effort, or else, like, everybody would just be looking for like that quick fix. But as we know in gardening, like, there's so many factors that are out of our control. Like, even if we do take care of the soil completely, we could get a random frost that we weren't preparing that could take out our crops. So I know, like, there are so many variables in gardening. If we can just make taking care of the soil a little bit easier, that's really what we wanna try to help people with.
Yeah, exactly. And one quick tip for those of you going into the fall season who plan to plant a garden, one really great thing that I always like to recommend is if you have, an in-ground area. I personally love growing in the ground just because then your roots, have all the room to grow. You're not having to buy soil to fill your containers. But now is a great time to amend that area, trying to, kind of get it ready for spring planting. But then in the fall, container gardening can be a great option just because the weather is cooler. You can move your pots under the cover if a frost is coming. It could just be a little bit more manageable. Where in the summer, at least for us here, it gets so hot, container gardening is really difficult.
Oh,
But for the
yeah.
fall and the winter months, container gardening is great. And so now would be a great time to just plant in containers, get a great crop out of, that simple, easy to manage garden, and then get your soil ready for the spring.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Because, yeah, as we know, if it's hot, in Southern Idaho where, we do a lot of our growing and stuff, we have, like, that arid desert kind of climate, and, yeah, if you're not careful, those root structures can cook in a raised garden bed for sure.
Yes. Well, Leah, I know we had a chance. We actually were able to talk on the phone earlier this week, just kind of, going more in depth on earth medicine. We actually have an exciting thing coming up with you and your dad. So I guess I'll tell the listeners about that first. So in the new year, in February, I am going to be hosting the Spring Gardening Summit, which this will be the third time I believe that it has happened in February. And it's a great event. It teaches everything from how to grow the plants, how to approve or improve your soil, how to preserve your harvest. It's just an incredible event. And Leah and her dad are going to be some special guest speakers. So if you actually want a chance to learn more from them and to ask some questions personally, definitely be sure to sign up for the Spring Gardening Summit. I know it's still a ways away, but it'll be here before we know it. So I just wanted to quickly mention that. The waitlist link will be in the description. But as we were talking about you guys joining the event, we kind of went on the whole side tangent of how you guys came to be and your dad's history in gardening and how earth medicine started. So I would love if you could tell us that story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you know, I always start out with the story of earth medicine with my dad because he is the inventor and creator of the product. He is a bit of a kind of like a jack of all trades, mad scientist sort of combo mixed in with a farmer, right? So, which I think a lot of farmers are, a lot of the times they're problem solvers. And that's in essence what he is. And so my parents have been we've always been in the agricultural world, whether it's been with cattle, custom farming, composting. That has been the bread and butter of their career. And when we were green chopping in southern Idaho, he basically developed this method of what we call green chopping, where you chop, alfalfa for the dairy cattle early in the morning, and you deliver them fresh feed for that morning feeding, straight from crop to the pen for the cattle. One stop shop. So it's basically the freshest form of feed for those dairy cattle that one can produce for them, and that just helps with milk production, health, overall health of the cattle. It's a way to get really nutrient rich, a nutrient rich diet into those animals during that season, right? And that kind of is what makes our product unique, because how this links to earth medicine is in Southern Idaho, in our area specific, we have an abundance of dairies, like very large scale operations. And those dairy cattle are producing a massive amount of waste every single day. And that waste is actually really nutrient rich because of the kind of diet that they are fed to have really high quality milk production. And so he came into this industry of seeing, okay, we have all this manure being produced. We have to do something with it. We have to sustainably manage this. And so he then started composting. And this was a very, very large operation. He was doing like football fields of like aerobic composting. And that is just a method of composting where you have these long rows. You are constantly turning and monitoring the piles. You're adding moisture to make sure that it doesn't get too hot, that it doesn't get too wet. And what you end up with is a really, really high quality aerobic compost. Now, I'm sure everybody who's been in gardening for a while knows not all compost is created equal. There's a lot of undigested materials out there. There are a lot of different products that can end up having diseases, pathogens, weed seeds. And that's honestly just because the manufacturer did not take their time in producing a really high quality product. Um, and that's why, honestly, a lot of the times you can get it so cheap. But like buyer beware, because it can really set you back for seasons if you end up getting a bad product. But that's a side note. So he really became a master in composting, specifically aerobic composting methods. And so he was making this really high quality product that was being sold back to the farmers, and they were putting it on their fields. But what he found was you come into the issue of freight. So trucking, shipping, it costs a lot of money to move, even just 10 tons of compost. And so he saw this need to get really high quality compost into more hands, but he didn't have a way to get it to them. He didn't have a way to get it, across America. And so what he started doing is playing around with the idea of condensing it into a granular form, but also keeping it shelf stable biology. So he ended up designing and creating what we call our earth medicine chamber. And this chamber is this piece of equipment that through a series of turning, heat, moisture, we're able to create a granular shelf stable microbial fertilizer. So what we do is we essentially take this high quality aerobic compost, we funnel it into our earth medicine chamber, and then we monitor it very, very closely for 24 hours. And the microbes, through this series of turning, moisture, heat, everything, these microbes spontaneously start to multiply. And through the multiplication of the microbes, these granulars start to form. All natural. It's not, we're not going in there and smashing and pelletizing anything. We're not trying to compress anything. It's very, very natural. And so, with these granulars spontaneously forming, we end up getting this biological product that is 10 times the potency of regular compost. So, for 1 ton of earth medicine, you would need 10, 20 tons of compost to get the same result. So, basically, we're taking all of the bulk out of a compost, and all we're leaving you with is the actual biology, which is essentially what you're adding compost into your yards for. And we're really just trying to mimic Mother Nature. We're just speeding up the process. So, Mother Nature naturally decomposes all these organic materials to create an abundance of microbial life. We're doing that. Just we're speeding up the process within a couple days so that you can get this product that is encapsulated in these little granular forms that can sit on your shelf all winter long until you're ready to, incorporate it back into the soil in the spring. So it's really, really unique. I have not seen any products like it because, there's no dust, there's no smell. You just get these little glass granular beads that are in their own protective coating that just are able to sit on your shelf until you're ready to use them. What actually begins to wake them up is when you add them to the soil and you add water. That water breaks down that protective coating, and those microbes wake up and begin to multiply into your soil. So it's again relating it back to probiotics. You have those probiotics sitting in those capsules on your shelf until you're ready to take them, until ingest them, and then your stomach acid breaks them down, and you're able to populate your gut with that beneficial bacteria. It's the exact same with the earth medicine. We're just trying to make a really user-friendly, high quality, compost-based product, that we can get into more hands than if we were just selling compost, to our local community.
Yeah, that is so incredible and such an interesting story and the way you guys learned just the way, you see, or for us here, we have lots of dairies around too. And I always see the huge piles of manure and, it's covered and I assume they're turning it into compost. But
Mhm.
I would have never imagined, taking a product like that and then figuring out that you could put it through this chamber and create this, the end all be all of earth medicine. That is just a really cool story.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, it just kind of it came out of a need to solve this issue of we truly believe that more people need to be using compost based products. Like we truly believe that adding microbes into the soil is the key thing that is missing in today's growing world. And if we can make a product that is easily accessible to right from your house plants, to somebody who just has access to a balcony garden in, a high rise apartment, to someone with a homestead and a farm like what you have. Like we want to make a product that is accessible for everybody in between, just by getting you guys a high quality compost based product into your hands.
Right. And I actually didn't even think of this till right now, but would you consider earth medicine more of actually a form of compost versus a fertilizer?
Um,
Or
I would say actually no, I would keep it in the fertilizer category just because with compost, you are getting that bulk and that
right,
organic matter. We don't have a lot of organic matter in our products. So like for yourself, where you said I had really compacted soils and I needed to amend it with adding more organic material into it in the form of compost. Earth medicine isn't going to be that for you. It doesn't have that fluffy organic component that helps, that you can basically cut your poor soil with. So I would keep it into the category of the amendment and fertilizer only because we don't have that fluffy organic materials that a really good quality compost has.
right. Okay, that makes sense actually. As you like explain that, and actually after that explanation, I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, compared to a lot of fertilizers, earth medicine is actually adding the beneficial microbes, which most fertilizers, or maybe not even any, have that ability. Is that correct?
No, yeah, that's correct. So like a lot of fertilizers is really just targeting that NPK, like that nutrients that we're trying to add to make it available for the plant. A lot of other products too, even if they're organic, you gotta make sure that the organic like, the actual microbial activity is alive. A lot of stuff isn't shelf stable. That's why they have very short expiration dates. That's why a lot of the times they're liquids, and it's because they don't have that biology that is actually alive, because it's actually kinda hard to keep biology alive, if it's not kept in its correct form where it's able to either remain dormant like ours, or if it has enough oxygen, like in maybe a liquid. Yeah, it's very unlikely that the microbes that you're getting are even actually alive. So that's kind of one thing that we do find in comparison is just that shelf stable is kind of like a I keep on saying that over and over again, but gardening is an investment. We want to make sure that what we're investing our time and our money into actually lasts. And so I do feel like that's an important component of it.
Right. Is there a certain process that you guys do to ensure that earth medicine is shelf stable?
So the process is in itself of the chamber. So
Okay.
yeah, like Mother Nature, she's so smart, like so smart that the microbes creating their own protective coating over top of them is perfectly by design Mother Nature herself. And so that's kind of the unique process. We don't actually have to treat it with anything.
Oh,
So
wow.
which is really great for us. It's purely the process of just speeding up what Mother Nature naturally does and her natural decomposition. It creates that protective coating.
Right. Oh, that's super cool. And I'm
Mhm.
not to ever put other companies down, but I'm just assuming the products that you see that say that you're adding microbes back to your soil, and like you said, they usually probably have a very short shelf life.
Yep.
They're likely not going through this similar process that allows that process to happen. Maybe not
No,
for everyone, but for a majority of companies we're seeing on the shelf.
yeah, I honestly don't see anybody who has the kind of technology that we're using just because it's proprietary. It's a patented process that we've created ourselves that isn't out on the market. And we're a small company, and every single batch that our customers receive, every single bag that's been, shipped out has touched our hands. And when you have such an attention to detail and care, for the product, y it's not everybody can replicate that. No one can replicate that, really, honestly,
Right.
because it's not, an automative thing that just any Joe off the street can create. It's something that has been it's almost kind of like an art form. I You could relate it to like someone who's like or a baker. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you can I can make cookies and then a top tier baker in from France can make cookies. They aren't gonna taste the same. You know what I mean? Because like it's almost like an art form. Yes, there's the mechanics of it, but there and the science that goes behind it, but there's also a unique art form into actually creating the end product, which is what we're able to do because we are so small and because we make these small batches of product. That's what our clients are getting.
Right. I love that. And I just personally, I really love to support small family companies, especially with such amazing products, of course. But I think that's one of the incredible things that, or for me personally, being in the online space, is there's so many hidden gems in the world. And Earth Medicine was definitely one of them for me. I didn't know about you guys until I got introduced to you, or until the guys from Seed Time introduced me to you guys. And
Yeah.
but it was just incredible because it just shows that the internet is it's so big, but it's also so small. And then
Mhm.
now being that I teach about gardening, it's like this was definitely the product where I'm like, everyone needs to know about Earth Medicine just because, first of all, the quality of the product, but then just your guys' story and supporting a family owned company. And I love that you and your dad are still at this together today. It's just really, really inspiring and awesome for the world of gardening and all the gardeners out there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because like I think a lot of the times with products, especially like microbial products, like you'll you'll see like, oh, our microbes are made in a lab. And I'm like, what are you doing in a lab? You know, like I want something that is mimicking Mother Nature. I want to keep it like, I want to be also one, recycling a massive amount of waste that needs to be recycled regardless. I don't care who you are. You need to have that massive amount of manure being produced, recycled sustainably. I don't want something replicated in a lab. That's getting too synthetic for me. That's getting too, like that's not solving a overall problem. And not to say like there's a problem even at hand. It's just we have this. Animals are producing this whether we like it or not. We have to do something with it. Why not use these resources and make it available for everybody else to benefit from? Why are we creating something out of nothing in a lab when we have an abundance of resources right here that need to be utilized?
Right.
So that's kind of, you know, a key component for myself in that form. Um and yes, yep, it's like we're, family ran, family owned. We have, another business partner who helps with production, who him and his family are like family to us. We're American made, American produced, using American materials, like all of that stuff, it's not everything, but it does matter to some degree. And we're very happy and proud of that.
Yeah. Well, I know it matters to me, and I'm sure it matters to a lot of people in my audience. So, my hope today is that after we put this episode into the world, that a lot of people who maybe have never heard of you now will know about you guys. Because I know I was one of the ones that it took me a lot of years to find you guys. So, I'm excited that we can do this
Yeah.
episode and get your guys' company out into the world for more to learn about. Will you go into the a couple of the other side projects you guys are doing, because you never know who might be listening, but I know you guys serve people more than just the home gardener, but you have kind of a bigger scale side project that you guys are working on. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so we have our home garden network, which is like our 7 and 5 pound bags, and those that's kind of like been our bread and butter for a long time. But just recently, in the last couple years, I decided to take the company on more of a commercial route. And we have been actually catering to golf courses and reclamation. So that's been really, really cool too. The golf world is a massive industry that has a lot of land that they maintain and they have to keep it in pristine conditions. And one way to do that is by incorporating organics, and especially with just the climate of where golf courses are trying to go with having a more sustainable practice with their own programs that they're using. I know a lot of golf courses are taking more of a natural approach to managing their greens. We want to be available to them for that because, like I said, we don't have any dust, we don't have any smell, and we're really easy to use in conjunction to other products that are on the organic side. I honestly didn't know that not having any smell mattered until I got into that world. They were very, happy and welcomed us with open arms because of that pure factor. And then on the other side of things, reclamation work, we do a lot of that with different agencies that are in charge of reclaiming land that has been torn up after mining or amendment or anything like that. We're available, at least on the West Coast, we're available to projects like that because, yes, there are organics out there that are incorporated in those fields, but a lot of the times that's coming out from the Midwest, which is great. They have abundance of turkey farms and chicken farms out there, and so they use a lot of poultry manure out there. But if I can help anybody in my Western hemisphere with those, with reclamation, more than happy to do so because we have our own resources here that need to be used up. And um, again, in the golfing world, we're across the US, right from Idaho to Florida, because we're able to get them that condensed microbial fertilizer in that where the a little goes a long way for them as well. So it's kind of cool to see that aspect as well. So, we do have some organic farms. I should say that too. I don't have a lot of organic farms, but in the Idaho area, we do have some organic farmers using our product, and it's been really, really awesome, especially in the irrigated organic farms. Just their crop yield has been better than they've ever had before. Just because honestly, it really helps with that seed germination. So that's been really cool to see too, as well. Yeah.
Wow, really cool stories. I don't think I've ever talked about it on the podcast, but my husband and I are huge golfers. It's one of our favorite things to do. And so when you told me that you guys were helping out the golf courses, my first thought was like, I got to take this to the golf course with me on Thursday and show them that they need to add
Yeah.
this to their greens to make them a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and recover time way quicker because again, all you need to do is talk to that superintendent and tell them like, I understand you are trying to keep that plant within an inch of its life, and that is a very, very hard thing to do. Like, it's not
Yeah.
just cutting grass out there. Like those guys are doing a lot of work, and it is a dialed in science on what they do to keep those places looking pristine. It's honestly, it's incredible. I have so much respect for the superintendents.
Right. Well, that's how we are. Our favorite thing to do is go golfing all the different places we go, which is why we love the sport because you can do it everywhere basically.
Yeah.
But it is always one of those things like as the golfer, if you go to a golf course and the fairways don't look good or the greens are kind of messed up, you're like, oh, you're kind of like are mad at the golf course. But it's like when you actually think of the whole picture, it is so hard. I can't imagine even trying to manage or keep it looking good because our
Mhm.
own lawn, it's like it's hard enough to keep a small backyard lawn looking good, and you're not even doing
And you
close
don't
to
have
what
the
the golf
cart
course is doing.
traffic, you don't have the foot
Yeah.
traffic, you don't have yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to think like say you have 74 acres of homestead that you're growing, different crops in. Could you imagine 74 acres and it has to look like a five-star resort?
Right.
Like, it's crazy. So, yeah, no, they got a lot going on, and they make it look easy, I think, because we
Yeah.
just get to reap all the benefits of all their
Right.
hard work, but, yeah, again, if we can make their job a little bit easier by producing a product that can help their turf heal faster, I'm all here for it.
Yeah, that's incredible. You kind of mentioned some of the results that the organic farms were seeing, but do you have any specific success stories that you can think of from any home gardeners?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today, and there's been a couple. One being just in yield. honestly. Like, one great feedback we got from was actually from the Seed Time guys, of just letting us know of, they did very like non-biased kind of trial where I believe it was Luke, where he put down earth medicine just at our recommended top dressing rates, over top of his lettuce row, and then left a row without earth medicine. And he was getting double the harvest in half the time.
Wow.
And so for him, he's a market gardener. He's harvesting, he's selling back to the public. Like that's a great results, right? Great return on his investment, especially for that type of operation. And then for maybe just on a personal note, I have an individual who she sticks out in my mind because she is just your regular backyard gardener. She has some raised garden beds and she would try to plant carrots. And as you know, carrots, they take a lot of energy to grow. They can be very finicky when especially trying to grow in raised garden beds because you only have a finite amount of nutrients available in that soil. Um, she, for the first time, she was able to grow carrots in her raised garden beds after applying earth medicine. And that's just because she had the nutrients in that soil. She just didn't have the microbes, the living biology to trap or to access that trapped nutrients. And she was able to get these gorgeous carrots. So that was like really cool to see. And then, on another note, like it might not be for gardeners, but for flower owners, I know I've seen gorgeous, like hydrangea bushes and different perennial flowers where the blooms are just incredible. Again, just because they have that just complete access to all that nutrients in that soil because they finally added microbes. And then, you know, for like busy families who have a lot of small children and animals, say they have like a small backyard that they're trying to make the most of it. And it turns up to be like dirt because, you have the toddler in the playhouse and you have the dogs peeing in the backyard. And like for the life of them, they can't grow grass. And that's no fun, and that's not ideal, and no one likes that, even if you have a small backyard, and just using a 5-pound bag of earth medicine over that area with seeding in a new lawn, they can finally grow grass and have that nice lawn that is resilient to toddlers, kids playing, dogs going out there and using it as their own personal pee pad. They can actually have grass, and that's really cool to see too. So again, it's like, I know majority of your listeners are all gonna be like, hardcore gardeners, but it's just kinda I like to bring up those stories too so that they know, hey, if you're struggling with this patch of lawn, feel free to use Earth's medicine on it because it's absolutely going to help it as well.
Yeah. I love that. One thing I'm actually thinking of, because there's like quite a few spots in our lawn, which is just right to the side, and I'm like looking
Mhm.
at them and I'm like, oh, time to go put earth medicine. But do you have tips for if you have, even if it's only like a 10 by 10 lawn, do you have like a little shaker that you would recommend sprinkling it on, or how do you recommend applying it?
Hand broadcasting, to be
Okay.
honest, like,
Okay.
if you have, like, a 10 by 10 lawn and say if you have a dog, especially, like, female dogs, we know their pee spots, just it's like the enzymes in their pee,
Yeah.
can end up causing more burning to the lawn. If you can work up the soil, like, I'll take a little hand trowel and I'll work up the soil and I'll put down the earth medicine and then water as normal. I'll just spot treat on those, deficient areas, and that works amazing. If you are like, "Hey, I bought this 7-pound bag. I wanna treat my whole lawn. I don't care, like, this is exactly what I wanna do," just put it in your fertilizer broadcaster, and you can just set it to, I would just do, oh gosh, like 1 pound per 100 square feet and just broadcast it that way. You can use it
Yeah.
as that. But for me, again, I'm a token lazy gardener. I just want to go out there and just hand broadcast it on there. Because again, I'm not worried about burning anything.
Yeah.
Like I'm not worried about burning anything. I know a little goes a long way. I have gotten better. I have a little measuring spoon and I'll like take a tablespoon and I'll spread it out there to just get more accurate application. But Yeah, you can honestly just use your hand and spread it out
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, and I guess also because it's, because it's the beneficial microbes, once they get into the soil, I would assume, it's like they just then start kind of multiplying. So it doesn't
Yep.
necessarily matter exactly where it gets placed. It's just feeding the soil and then it's just kind of all multiplying beneath the soil. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
Okay.
you can do um if you are just trying to generally broadcast in that area, it's going to find if you have a specific like dead zone, yeah, of course, concentrate the product there. Don't go put it over on the other side of the lawn and hope that it treats this brown spot that's 100 feet away. But yeah, it's really not that complicated. And I always encourage people, just try it, put it on like the worst area, and then uh get your own personal feedback from that. That's kind of what I would always like when I have people trying it out for the first time. I'm like, where's the worst area in your yard? Put some of it there, water it in, take a before photo, and take a after photo in like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and let me know what you think. You'll see
Yeah.
a difference. Like you just will.
Yeah, and that was leading me to my next question of how long to expect to see the results usually. Is that about 3 to 4 weeks is when you would see results for something
Yeah.
like the lawn?
Oh, for sure. You're definitely going to see something in 4 weeks. You could see something so much sooner than that. Like I have people like within 7 days, if they're putting, say, you have a small area, and you're putting down sod. And this is kind of taking it back to like my golf people days, but um, you're laying down fresh sod. Put down earth medicine. Put down your sod. That sod is going to be completely rooted with by day 7.
Wow.
So, and that is I know, that is unheard of. Like, that is something a lot of the times people, they don't have their this you can still see their lines and their freshly laid sod a month down the road, right? Um, you're gonna see results within 7 days on that in that form. With your garden, with your flowers, with anything like that, yes, 3 to 4 weeks. I like to give it that window of time to see the results.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to just now I've been using it here and there, but I haven't been doing the before and after picture. So now I'm like with the lawn for that
Yeah,
for real because it's like I can see bad spots. So I'm like I'm going to do
yeah.
the before and after video. So everyone who's listening, be sure to watch for those cuz they'll be coming.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm excited. I know. I always tell people, like, I'm like, take a before photo, like, or if you like, because I like doing little experiments too, and I have a lot of customers, which I'm so thankful for, because all my content is, what they've given me, where they're like, yeah, I bought 2 planters from Costco. One has earth medicine, one doesn't, and like, you can see the difference majorly. It's kind of incredible. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if anybody was curious and trying that, it's just fun to see.
Yeah. Well, that's my problem is I have such limited time, with a 3-year-old running around and
Yes.
business and all the animals and garden and everything. It's like when I finally get the chance to go out and do certain garden tasks, it's like, okay, as quick as I could do it real quick, but I'm like not even thinking of like the videos and the pictures. And when I'm intentional, of course, doing something for the blog or YouTube channel, I am more intentional of doing those photos and videos. But the earth medicine is just like, oh, I need to go get
Yeah.
this done and I haven't taken pictures. So now I'm just like I'm looking at some flowers too in my view that I'm like, "Oh, they don't look very good. Let's do some earth medicine and see what
Oh, that
happens."
would be awesome. I know I love flowers because 'cause they're just so, like they just produce such results, like, you can tell when they're happy and they're abundant and they're overflowing, like
Yeah.
yeah, I love using flowers as an example for before and after because it's just shocking.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, the other
it's
thing I
funny.
wanted to also touch on is, the water holding capacity. When you have earth medicine in your soil, be prepared that that your plants are going to be so much more, um, able to have a better water retention, especially in your potted flowers.
Oh, wow. What a great benefit, especially for I feel so bad for all of those who I've heard just so many stories from listeners who are limited in how much they're choosing to grow just because their water bill is so high. So when you think of the fact that you can give
True.
their plants give plants the microbes they need to then hold on to more water, what a great benefit.
Oh, yeah, and same with, lawns, with flowers, with potted plants and anything like that, yeah, it's absolutely when you have a really healthy soil, that soil will retain moisture way better because, again, Mother Nature's smart, she's holding on to water reserves in case of a drought. And so, like, being in an arid desert climate in Southern Idaho, I love it for potted plants, because if I'm not home by a certain time, that can all be wiped out because it's completely dried out. But what I have found is that my flowers and my potted plants are just so much more heat resistant. Like they have more of a drought tolerance, which is awesome. And then too, in like the peak of the summer heat with our lawns, um, we find that our lawns aren't burning up and we actually have to cut down watering by about 50% because we don't want to be cutting the lawn, like 2 times a day, 2 times a week,
Yeah.
3 times a week. We just want to cut it once a week. And so one way we do that is by cutting down on that watering. So,
Wow.
they're just like these added benefits that we don't really think of until we're in the moment and we realize, that we actually don't need to water as much as we think we need to when the soil is really healthy.
Yeah, and I always my whole goal just with Audrey's Little Farm in general is to make all the processes as simple as possible for the new gardener, even the experienced gardener who just wants to find some new hacks or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think that I love how you today kept relating everything back to nature because I go back to that concept all the time too. Because, you think of these beautiful meadows and areas in the foothills and the mountains and different areas. And it's like, there might not be rain for a month, but yet those plants are still all alive. And
Yeah.
the soil is obviously full of everything those plants need because no one's out there fertilizing. And I
Yep.
always try to kind of relate the home garden back to just how nature is naturally. And like we have to, it's a mindset shift for a lot of people because we're taught to think so differently.
Oh,
But I always
yeah.
think like, how can that all survive without anything if,
Yep.
things I'm not even saying it well, but it's just like,
Well, that's
trees
a
lose
human
their leaves and then they
intervention.
break down and then it feeds the
Yeah.
microbes and like eventually, rain does come, but that ground is like holding on to the moisture and the nutrients it needs in those off seasons. So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah,
I
Mother
just think
Nature literally, she has it figured out. If we don't intervene, she's got it covered.
yeah,
And that's really like what we're trying to do is just mimic a product after Mother Nature to just help us as humans, grow the most abundant gardens, flowers, house plants. Side note, you can use it in your house plants, people. Like a lot of people don't add compost into their houseplants, but I'm telling you, it's a complete hack. It is like the best thing you can add to those houseplants because they're in a little potted plant area thing. They are not getting access to dead leaves, organic matter, decomposition of different materials to then feed the soil. They don't have that. So if you're adding those beneficial microbes, your houseplants are going to transform as well. So
yeah,
just another area to use it.
yeah. And I have some houseplants too, and I'm definitely adding the earth medicine. I haven't yet. And so it'll be another one of those before and after videos that will be coming to be
Yeah.
continued. So awesome. Well, if you could just leave we've already talked about so many tips and uses and everything, but if you could just leave our listeners with one message about either why microbes matter or how earth medicine could change something or just an overall gardening tip, do you have something you could share just as a closing tip?
Yeah. It's a great question. I honestly, I feel like the main thing I could maybe leave the listeners with is to think of microbes as nature's hidden workforce. We might not be able to see them with the naked eye. We might not be able to, visually see what's going on in that top 6 inches of that soil profile, but there is an abundance of life and activity going on there. And if we can just if we can just feed that microbial life in that top couple inches of that soil profile, that's really going to help us grow really abundant crops. Um, and a lot of the times, even though we can't see them with the naked eye, we will see the results in the crops and in the produce that we are able to harvest after those efforts. So, um, it's really just, to let people know, don't discount that. Don't discount the soil. Don't leave it to be an afterthought. I know there's so much going on in the garden, and there's so much time and money going into the garden that if we can just kind of create a little bit of an insurance policy with adding beneficial microbes into that soil, I feel like we're going to be overall happier gardeners.
Right. Such a great tip. Um, so inspiring, so great. Thank you so much for joining us today and teaching us all about earth medicine and not even just it's not even like a sales pitch for the product, but just a overall teaching of how to grow that abundant garden. And of course, earth medicine is going to help us do that. But it just you gave us such a great understanding of all the things that go into soil and microbes and all the things that are really just that complicated or that are so complicated for many gardeners. So thank you again. And if
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank
And if
you. Thank you so much for having me and having me on your great podcast. This has been so much fun. I love talking about this stuff and just putting it into the most simplest terms for just everyday people like myself, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners, that are just trying we're just all trying to do our best here. So I'm so happy that you invited me on, and thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Well, it's nice that you could talk in just such simple terms that are easy to understand because I don't want to have to bust out the science book to help explain things. It's like just just explain it in a simple way for the everyday gardener to understand. Because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if we understand the specifics. We just need to know what we're doing is helping. And
Mhm.
I think that's sometimes like hard to grasp because we want to really understand like what's going on. But as long as we know we're helping, we don't really
Mhm.
need to understand everything. We can see the results in the plants.
Yes, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yes. Well, everyone, if you are ready to get your own bag of earth medicine, be sure to check the link in the description. I will have that right below the podcast here on YouTube or on the audio version. So grab your earth medicine. Be sure to join us for the Spring Gardening Summit with Leah and her dad. And have a great gardening season. Leah, thank you again.
Thank you.